Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Further to continue with the deciphering of the Quran, today with the knowledge bestowed on me by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let me unravel the event of creation of life on earth with the help of Quran, Genesis and Vedas. Presently, there are several scientific theories exist to explain the origin of life, but none of them authentically confirms the mode of origin of life on earth. But the Creator Himself has explained the origin of life in Quran, but till today we fail to understand this as we are considering this only as a religious book. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explicitly mentioned in chapter number 21, verse number 10 and chapter number 24, verse number 46 that indeed we have sent down a book to you, in it your mention is there. We have revealed the verses that explain the facts. So, let us understand what is mentioned about us and decode the hidden facts from it. According to the lone creator of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the living things are created from the non-living things as mentioned in the chapter number 30, verse number 19. Then the question is, how does this happen? As mentioned in the chapter number 21, verse number 30, in the beginning, both continental and oceanic crust was not differentiated, but later filled with water, forming land and ocean. In this water, life originated. But the question is, how did the life begin initially? The chapter number 15, verse number 26 states that, indeed, we created man from the sounding clay, formed from altered black mud. Similarly, chapter number 23, verse number 12 and chapter number 32, verse number 7 mentions that the man was created from extract of clay. The chapter number 16, verse number 4 and chapter number 22, verse number 5 states that the man was created from soil and then from single nuclei. Here we should read nutfatin as nuclei or nucleus. Further, the chapter number 32, verse number 7 to 9 mentions that he started the creation of man from clay. Then he continued his lineage from watery liquid. Then he fashioned him and blew his spirit into him. All this information is related to origin of life, but we have to think practically and decipher the information rationally. Here, the lone creator of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is mentioning that the first living cell was formed from the clay derived from the weathered black soil that formed from basalt. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring this cell as man. But still it is not clear how does a process of cell formation start from a static condition. To understand this, we have to consider the information mentioned in Ayurveda. According to Ayurveda, the human body is created from Panchabhuta, meaning 5 elements. These 5 elements are earth, water, air, fire and space. From this, we can understand that the clay represents the earth, water is the water present in the primordial oceans and the gases represent the air. As mentioned in the book of Genesis, chapter number 1, verse number 3 and 14, God created light during the initial stages of the origin of the universe. This also means that there were plenty of lightning during the initial stages of the Earth's origin, as the Earth is created in such a way that it replicates the universe. This indicates that the lightning represents the fire that mentioned in the Ayurveda. Then what about the fifth element, space? Actually, it is not space. It is the Spirit of God as mentioned in the Quran, chapter number 15, verse number 29, chapter number 32, verse number 9, and the book of Genesis, chapter number 2, verse number 7, that the God blew his spirit into the newly created man. Therefore, the 5 fundamental elements are clay, water, gases, lightning, and God's spirit. If we look at the chemical and physical properties of clay and black soil, we can notice that the particle size of clay is less than 2 micron, plastic in nature in presence of water content, and have cation exchange capability. And the black soil is extremely compact and tenacious when wet and have clayey texture, rich in calcium carbonate, magnesium, potassium, and lime. All this information indicate that the clay was acted as a base with a suitable structure and elements like calcium, magnesium, aluminum, iron, carbon and water acted as a precursor to form a compound, but the only lacking thing was a spark to start the process, which was supplied by the lightning. Based on the details mentioned in different chapters of Quran, we can presume that all these things occurred at the edges of a shallow water bodies or marshes or swamps where a lightning hit to the clay, initiating the reaction which led to the formation of nucleus. Then the statement, he continued his lineage from watery liquid and then proportioned him, as mentioned in the chapter number 32, verse number 8 to 9, and we created man from the extract of clay, then made it a singular nuclei, then developed it into organism, then added muscles, then turned the muscles into bones, then put skin over it, then turned it into different organisms, as mentioned in chapter number 23, verse number 12 to 14, indicate the formation of cytoplasm, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, mitochondria, and other parts that are essential for the formation of a cell. Then the statement, then he proportioned him and covered with the skin, indicate that the cell was proportioned with all its parts and covered with cell membrane to form a first ever complete cell into which Allah breathed his spirit. Finally, it became the first ever living cell to which Allah called man and later Adam when it was transformed into a single-celled organism. Later, the newly formed single-celled organism is subjected to a deep slumber and from it a companion was created asexually by cell division, which is mentioned in the chapter number 4 verse number 1 and Genesis chapter number 2 verse number 21, as Allah created its pair from it as a companion from the side portion of Adam. Moreover, it is also mentioned like the God took part of the man's side and closed up the place with flesh. Then God made a woman from that part he had taken out of the man. As you can see in the following slide, this phenomena can be observed in the unicellular organisms now also. This is known as binary fission, which can be seen in paramecium, as you can see in this slide. Here you can see that there is a compression at the middle portion which can be comparable to the rib portion of the human beings. The compressed portion appears like as if some portion of it has been taken from it. This is the reason it is said God took part of the man's side. Later, a cell wall grows along this compressed region that separates it into two organisms. This is the reason why Adam said, "This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," as mentioned in the Genesis chapter number 2 verse number 23. All this information indicates that the first organism which is mentioned as Adam is the paramecium. The chapter number 2 verse number 34, chapter number 7 verse number 11, chapter number 17 verse number 61, chapter number 20 verse number 116 mentions that when Allah asked the angels to prostrate in front of man, except Iblis, everyone prostrated in front of man. When Allah asked the Iblis why he did not prostrate in front of man, Iblis said, "Should I prostrate in front of him who is created from soil? You have created me from fire and you have created man from clay," as mentioned in the chapter number 17 verse number 61 and chapter number 7 verse number 12. This indicates that the angels were created prior to the man and they were created from fire. This suggests that the angels were created from air, water, lightning and Allah's spirit. Here, the angels represent the bacteria and Iblis represents the virus. This indicates that the bacteria were created first and from them viruses were created, as it is mentioned that the Iblis was banished from the heaven when he was disobeyed the God by not prostrating in front of man. Moreover, the act of prostrating indicates submission and indicates that the bacteria entered into the newly formed cells. This also indicates that some of the bacteria were beneficial to the newly created cell and few others were not. This also could mean that the early formed cells were either consuming bacteria or bacteria were beneficial to the early formed cells in some way. The scientific study shows that the major difference between the prokaryote and eukaryote is the absence and presence of nucleus. This indicates that the clay is essential for the formation of nucleus. This is how life originated on the earth. Now, let us see who represents the first formed cell and first formed organism among the prophets. As I have shown in my previous presentations that the events of creation is represented by one or the other prophet. Here, the early formed cell is represented by the prophet Hanuman, and the early formed unicellular organism is represented by the prophet Adam, as it is referred as human or man and Adam in Quran and Genesis. As a human enactment, Prophet Hanuman and Prophet Adam lived their life depicting this event of creation of life on the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not only explained the creation of the life, but also showed the place where these events took place on the earth. It is mentioned in the book of Genesis, chapter number 2, verse number 8, that the Lord God planted an orchard in the east in Eden, and there he planted the man he had formed. In addition to this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to show his signs at the end times, which we all will recognize as mentioned in the Quran, chapter number 21, verse number 37, and chapter number 27, verse number 93. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the earth as canvas and sculpting medium to show his signs, and painted and sculpted his signs on the earth. Therefore, to see his signs, let us take the help of Google Map or Google Earth and search in the east as mentioned earlier. If it is Google Map, first turn it into satellite mode. See, here in this eastern part of the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown the place where the nucleation and creation of the first cell has occurred in the form of an impregnated abdomen. There is a controversy regarding the birthplace of Hanuman. Let me tell you that this is the area where the nucleation took place, but it has fully grown into a cell at this area, which is shown with early pregnancy and full pregnancy abdomen respectively. It is stated in the chapter number 23, verse number 12 to 13 that we created human from an extract of clay, then placed him as a nucleus in a secure place. As you can see in this picture, a nucleus is placed inside an abdomen on this side, and on the other side you can see a baby in a full pregnant abdomen. Therefore, this is the area where the nucleation occurred, and this is the area where the Prophet Hanuman was born. One can see an image of Prophet Hanuman carved out of the pregnant abdomen, as you can see in this slide. Here you can see one more image of Prophet Hanuman. See how majestically he is sitting with his mace, which is called Gadha in India. It is very sad and unfortunate that the people have destroyed the Gadha of Hanuman. This also suggests that there might be multiple nuclei have formed on the entire land, but only one has grown into a fully functional cell at this place. Later, this first unicellular organism mentioned as Adam has undergone division, forming its companion organism called Eve or Hawa. In this picture, you can see Eve and Adam. As mentioned earlier, the Eve separated from Adam's ribs portion. This is the reason why South America separated from Africa as an enactment of this event for the earth. Let me tell you one more thing here. Since the beginning, there is only one religion exists on the earth, that is Islam, which originated in India, and the first living cell that was created in India was the first Muslim. The life history of Prophet Hanuman represents this event as a human enactment, and he was the first Muslim. As you can see in this slide, this is the larger image of Hanuman, suggesting he roamed in this entire land, and this is his pelvic area. If you zoom here, you can view his phallus. It is clearly visible that Hanuman's phallus is circumcised. If you carefully observe, you can see the veins also. Yes, the Prophet Hanuman was a devout Muslim and has undergone circumcision, and he was the first person to get circumcised. All this information implies that the religion is not different than science and science is not different than religion. They go hand in hand and they are intertwined. I have deciphered some of the events responsible for the origin of the life in this presentation, but still we have to dig more into the scriptures to figure out what is Allah's spirit. In my next presentation, I will provide the details of evolution of life as depicted in Quran and other scriptures, inshallah. To decipher more details of the creation of the universe and life on the earth requires more data and time, but the events are occurring in a rapid pace and we are left with less time. Therefore, I request the science and religious scholars to join hands with me to decode all the scriptures of the world and spread the true knowledge of all the scriptures of the world in a right spirit. This is my honest interpretation of the scriptures, but the true knowledge lies with the lone creator of the universe, whose name is Allah. All praises to Allah alone, the Lord of the universe. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.